Pikmin. The series where you can touch grass without touching grass. Where you can become one with nature. Tend to a garden, grow flowers, and most of all, Pikmin is a game series about nature. And just like nature, Pikmin can be brutal and horrifying at times. In the Pikmin series, you play as these little space captains that lead an ever-growing army of Pikmin. Plant-like creatures that can do a whole bunch of tasks for you. These adorable little guys come in several different varieties, each with their own unique skill sets. With these guys on hand, you fight enemies and solve puzzles in order to gather a bunch of different items. The Pikmin series has a beautiful way of immersing you in the nature of this strange planet, PNF 404, which is very clearly inspired by Earth. The perspective of a tiny alien person grants the world a magnitude, as well as a wonder, curiosity, and foreignness. And from this perspective, we can also appreciate the darker side of nature. Whether it is through the often strange and disturbing biology and lore behind the creatures you face, the tense and high-stakes moments that make you feel tiny, or the working relationship you have with the Pikmin, there's definitely a share of moments when the Pikmin series dips into horror. Pikmin 2 sees our protagonist, Captain Olimar, return home after barely surviving and escaping a planet he crash-landed into in Pikmin 1, only to be immediately sent back to collect treasures in order to repay the debts of the company he works for. Whereas the first Pikmin game has you fighting for survival, this one has you fighting for money. This can be seen in the new mechanics introduced in Pikmin 2. Greed runs deep. And so do the brand new caves that we get to explore in this game. The caves are dungeons where you clear sublevel after sublevel, gathering treasures to clear your debt, until generally you get to a boss that has a particular treasure that also grants you a new ability or upgrade of some kind. While exploring caves in this game, time is effectively frozen. On top of that, you don't have any sort of time limit to pay off the debt. Pikmin 1 was about managing time, but Pikmin 2 is about managing your Pikmin. As once you go into a cave, you can't reliably get any more Pikmin until you leave, meaning that every time that you hear the sad sound of a Pikmin death, it has a lasting impact. With so much of Pikmin 2's content being found in these caves, there is a great variety in what these caves have to offer. There's easy caves and difficult caves, natural aesthetics and industrial aesthetics, complex and straightforward. But among all of them, there is one cave in particular that I want to talk about, as it stands out for being so unique in its design, breaking series conventions and doing so to craft what in my opinion is the closest that the Pikmin series has come to bringing us a horror experience. It isn't gratuitously cruel like some of the other late game caves, but rather expertly crafted to keep you on edge the entire time. The journey that this cave puts us through starts in the Perplexing Pool, the third and biggest area in Pikmin 2. It is an area that immediately feels dangerous. This is due not only to the more muted color palette that fills the area, but also simply to the amount and kinds of enemies present, as well as the sheer amount of water you encounter here. It truly feels like a very alien area within this game, even more so than the rest of Pikmin 2. Far away in the most remote end of this area, there is a big pool of water that you have to traverse past some pretty annoying enemies, including a Woollyhop, some water dumples, and a withering blowhog. In the middle of all this water, you find this cave. The ship is immediately reluctant to go in. As you steel yourself, you can see that every kind of hazard is present in this cave. This is immediately a red flag because you can only get here with blue Pikmin. One thing about blue Pikmin, particularly noticeable in Pikmin 2, is that they tend to get the short end of the stick when it comes to abilities. The other types just tend to get more interesting qualities. Red Pikmin are immune to fire and do extra damage. Yellow Pikmin are immune to electricity and can be thrown higher. White Pikmin are particularly fast, immune to poison, and can see hidden treasures. And purple Pikmin? Well, they can do this. Meanwhile, all that blue Pikmin have going for them is that they're able to swim. And while swimming is certainly useful, there are big areas of water in this game. If you only have blue Pikmin and you have to deal with many different kinds of hazards and enemies, it effectively renders them a completely blank slate Pikmin. So, you're going into this cave, which has every kind of hazard. The ship doesn't even want to go in. And on top of that, you're forced to enter with only what is considered the weakest kind of Pikmin. This already sets the stage for a very interesting time. And so we enter the Submerged Castle. As we arrive in Sublevel 1, one thing that is immediately very noticeable is the creepy music that fills the air. The Pikmin soundtracks tend to be very chill and peaceful, something that invites you to stop and smell the alien roses. But the music here tells you that there is definitely something wrong. The outline of the first floor is very labyrinthine, which, granted, is typical for most caves in Pikmin 2, but it feels like there are just hallways and hallways for you to get lost in here. Another notable thing is that there is already a geyser to get out of this cave on floor 1. A lot of people might not necessarily use it, but it certainly reads as the game saying, hey, if this is too much and you want to leave, we understand. The other big thing about this first sublevel is that there's fire everywhere. There are fire geysers, fiery blowhogs, and even a fiery bulblax, an enemy covered in fire. Under normal circumstances, blue Pikmin would not be able to do anything to it. Fortunately, there are a couple of pools of water throughout the sublevel. The strategy to take care of this enemy is to lure it to a pool of water so that the fire is extinguished, and then you can defeat it. I really appreciate how this cave makes you have to strategize a little bit more than just saying, oh, okay, fiery bulblax, I'll throw red Pikmin at it. You don't have that option here. You have to figure out a good workaround. Fire in itself is certainly not the worst kind of hazard in the game. It gives you a pretty decent time frame to stop and whistle your Pikmin before they die. What it is though is time consuming. Pikmin on fire will run around like crazy, which means that you'll have to stop for a while every time that there's a group that you need to save, which is very likely to happen at least a couple of times here. Combine this with the scale and complexity of the level's map, and you're sure to spend quite a bit of time here. All things considered though, this is just Sublevel 1. We are just getting started. When you get to Sublevel 2, you're pretty much immediately greeted by some of the most beloved enemies in the entire series. Bulmin. In the lore, Bulmin are established to be a parasitic form of Pikmin that has taken over the bodies of Bulborbs, the basic enemies of the Pikmin series. The concept of Pikmin as parasites has been developed more in recent games, but this is the earliest, most gruesome, and also most iconic form of it. Here, the parasitic Pikmin takes over an actual living creature, rather than just a piece of rock or ice. It really makes one wonder, what the hell even are these things that we're working with? Regardless of the lore, these Bulmin are truly your biggest allies down here, because they are immune to everything. You now have an answer to the hazards in this cave, as you can use Bulmin instead of your blue Pikmin to deal with them. However, you don't get a ton of them. You only get 10 or 20 in a given sublevel, and that is only if it doesn't push you over the 100 Pikmin limit, with any over 100 just not spawning altogether. If you come down here with 100 blue Pikmin, which is the most natural thought as the game hasn't taught you to this point that you could gain new Pikmin underground, and if you don't lose any on floor 1, you actually won't get any Bulmin at all when they first appear, meaning that you'd be stuck with 100 blue Pikmin. Bulmin do appear more in this cave, but it is interesting that this cave is already flipping things on their head, by punishing what normally would be good preparation and optimal gameplay. Bulmin are a big help, but this level doesn't have a lot of hazardous elements per se. Instead, what it does have a lot of is time wasters. For one, there are many walls which pause your movement until your Pikmin tear them down. Also, there are a number of Dweevils that attempt to steal whatever your Pikmin are carrying back to base, and you must fight them to free the items, which can really slow down your process of bringing treasure back. Additionally, the cave entrance to the next sublevel, which is typically a free escape hatch when you're in a hurry, is blocked by default here and in the rest of the levels in this cave. That means even more time that you have to account for before preparing to continue deeper. I've been mentioning that there are several things that want to slow you down throughout this cave. However, as you go from floor 2 into floor 3, the game shifts from wanting to waste your time into wanting to murder you, while also wasting your time. In Sublevel 3, the main hazard is electricity. While electricity has been nerfed in more recent Pikmin entries, in Pikmin 2, if your Pikmin touch electricity, this happens. Yup, in this game, it is an insta-kill. That means that if you aren't careful, especially if you're using your blue Pikmin to deal with electric hazards, you're basically guaranteed to lose some. You must use your limited Bulmin to safely dismantle the hazards here. In this level, we also see an instance of a Wally Hop. For a lot of people, this would be the first time that they are forced to fight them without purple Pikmin in this game, as you could just sneak past some of them before. There is a reason these enemies were hated in Pikmin 1. Without the quality of life improvements or inclusions like Rock Pikmin of newer games, Wally Hops are pretty annoying to take care of. Wally Hops are basically insta-kill enemies that not even your Bulmin are immune to. They will either slow you down if you try to be careful, or kill many Pikmin if you are not. Though, more often than not, you will end up with some of both outcomes. This is another way in which this floor is designed to kill you, but also waste your time. There is another time-wasting problem here: the Withering Blowhogs. Personally, I consider them one of the most annoying enemies in the entire series. They don't actually kill any Pikmin, but they remove all the flowers from them, powering them down to base leaves. While not deadly on its own, if there's a cave where it's dangerous to have slow Pikmin, it is here. Also, they laugh if they manage to get any of your Pikmin. Screw these things. Additionally, in Sublevel 3, you encounter your first Candy Pup Bud in this cave, giving you the opportunity to get some white Pikmin. You know from the beginning that there is poison in this cave, and since you never know when a treasure might be buried underground and require them to get it, it feels like a no-brainer to get some here. The problem is that up to this point, you've only used blue Pikmin and Bulmin, both of which are able to swim. If you decide to switch some into white Pikmin here, which you probably should, then suddenly water becomes a hazard that you have to account for and work around again. Moving on to Sublevel 4, you encounter poison. The interesting thing about poison in this game is that it is the only hazard that is active all the time. Electricity is insta-kill, but at least the connectors go on and off. Fire geysers do as well. Poison, however, is active all the time, meaning that you absolutely need something that is immune to poison to be able to deal with it. If you didn't manage to get either Bulmin or white Pikmin by this point, there's not really anything that you can do with only blues that won't also waste a ton of time. Other than that, here we see one of the earliest instances of something that makes Pikmin 2 a little bit infamous: bomb traps. If you walk into a certain area, either alone or with Pikmin, depending on the trap, you will be surprised by an explosive weevil, a bomb, or an enemy that drops bombs from the air. These traps could potentially kill a lot of Pikmin very quickly. This sublevel is also notoriously large, making it a time waster in and of itself. It often puts you at odds. Do you want to be quick and risk losing a lot of Pikmin to the traps, or try scouting them out to try to preserve your numbers while also risking spending too much time here? Now that we've covered the main 4 floors of this cave, and before we go on to talk about the 5th and final one, Pikmin veterans would be expecting me to talk about the rolling elephant in the room that I've been avoiding. The reason why I've been holding off on this is because I really wanted to emphasize just how difficult this cave already is, even without this one last factor. Just describing this cave, from only using blue Pikmin to the sheer variety of hazards and enemies, it would already be pretty difficult if we left it at that. But the Submerged Castle turns another aspect of Pikmin 2 on its head. Pikmin 2 is a game where time management is largely irrelevant. Unlike Pikmin 1's strict 30 days, Pikmin 2 lacks a real time limit. In many ways, this game is kinder because time completely freezes while you're inside a cave. For the most part, there really isn't any penalty for staying in the caves too long. The one cave that makes me say, for the most part, is the Submerged Castle. Every time that you bring back a treasure to the ship pod, your screen fades to black and you're presented with a cutscene showing the treasure's value. Usually, this is just annoying at worst, because it stops you in your tracks while playing and it is never really urgent information. However, in this cave, if you know what's coming, every time that it fades to black, it will send a shiver down your spine. Because if you spend more than 5 minutes here, one time when it fades to black, it will be for an entirely different cutscene. With a high-pitched sound, this creature appears. This cutscene immediately drives home two things. This thing is dangerous, and it is immune to anything you could possibly do to it. The Water Wraith will chase after you until you leave the sublevel it appeared on. It tries to crush your Pikmin with the rollers it is riding on. It can also appear anywhere in the cave. While I was recording material for this, it spawned basically right on top of me and caused a Pikmin extinction on the first sublevel, no less. The Water Wraith has no limit to its kill potential, so you simply have to run. It can corner you and chase you in really uncomfortable situations. You have to either book it as fast as you possibly can, or huddle in a corner and hope your Pikmin don't move in a way that gets them killed. With this context, there's a whole new meaning to all those enemies and hazards that are simply there to be time wasters. In a normal situation, it would be pretty annoying to have that many things trying to slow you down. But the difference in the Submerged Castle is that wasting your time could lead to you being killed by something much bigger and much scarier. Now that we've mentioned all of this, we can talk about Sublevel 5, which is the light at the end of the cave. Here, you encounter 2 violet candy pop buds, allowing you to obtain 10 purple Pikmin. Throughout the entirety of the cave, you haven't been able to use them, but now they're here to fight the boss. The Water Wraith is weak only to purple Pikmin. As you fight it, it becomes somewhat pathetic. It looks visibly afraid of purple Pikmin, and curls up in a fetal position until you break the rollers. Then, it runs around in panic, and in this state you can see its true form, a blobby humanoid. Which, honestly, same. While the rollers are still active, you are not entirely out of the woods. If you are not careful, the Water Wraith can kill your purple Pikmin, but even with that little footnote, it is still one of the easiest bosses in the game at this point. And so, you will be able to defeat it, taking the mask off of the monster. Get your reward to the ship pod and hop out of this cave, leaving whatever Bulmin you still have. No, sadly these guys will never join us permanently. But with that, the gameplay for this cave comes to a close. When thinking about the Water Wraith, the biggest question that comes to mind is, what the hell even is it? It is one of very few enemies that don't leave behind a carcass, instead completely dissolving away, so there isn't really a body to analyze. It is also not even really made of water. We see that non-blue Pikmin drown in creatures that are actually made of water, which doesn't happen here. It is made of some sort of gel-like substance that can not only grab its rollers, but that can fully solidify. You could say that it is made of some sort of non-Newtonian fluid, but the name Oobleck Wraith doesn't really have that nice of a ring to it. The mystery is also present in the in-game text. We unfortunately don't have that much information because as of now in the series, there's only 3 Piclopedia entries and a handful of lines of dialogue about the Water Wraith. However, we can sort of extrapolate a handful of facts about this creature. It is huge, viscous, and clear. Whether you're merely in its vicinity or even dare to ingest some of it, it causes mental anguish ranging from panic to full-on hysteria. Gee, I wonder why. In its base form, it has no actual physical body, though it is still able to control its rollers, which are very much so physical. And lastly, it is vulnerable to gravitational waves, which make it temporarily take a physical form. Even though these are generally things that are consistently mentioned about it, it is still speculated in Pikmin canon that it might be the ectoplasmic incarnation of a psychic phenomenon, or even that it is simply hallucination brought about by the exhaustion and fear of explorers. Another lore tidbit that I find fascinating about the Water Wraith is its scientific name, Amphibios-sapiens. The first part obviously invokes the word amphibian, which makes sense as a creature made of fluid that exists on land, but much more interesting is the sapiens part, as that implies that the Water Wraith is a thinking being in a way at least comparable to us humans. It is unclear who is the one assigning the scientific names to creatures in this universe, as this taxonomy implies things even beyond what Olimar's notes have to say, but it definitely adds to the mystery and the horror of the Water Wraith. Is it a ghost? Is it some kind of extra-dimensional being? It's impossible to know for sure. Ultimately, the greatest thing about the Water Wraith is that it is a mystery, and just like a lot of effective monsters in horror, it is impossible to truly know it. From a gameplay standpoint, the Water Wraith is also such a unique enemy compared to everything else you can encounter in the series. Every other enemy has a right way that you can take it down if you are prepared with the right kind of Pikmin, and even then, the vast majority of the time you can just brute force your way to victory with the wrong strategy. While the Water Wraith does of course have a right kind of Pikmin, in no other situation are you forced to deal with an effectively invincible enemy for as long as you do in the first 4 floors of this cave. It is not something that you can really prepare for, and it puts you in a fully reactive position that the series never really puts you in again. Most other enemies have homes or designated areas that they won't chase you out of, but with the Water Wraith, you are in its home. The only place where this thing won't chase you is inside of a can or generally any areas too small for it. And while this is a grace that the game gives you, it is also a reminder that you are too little to actually do anything to this monster. And otherwise, you just have to run as fast as you possibly can, which can feel particularly nerve-wracking when the vast majority of hazards and enemies here are particularly good at getting rid of the flowers on your Pikmin, slowing them down and making them even more susceptible to finding their tiny bodies under those 2 rock cylinders. The Submerged Castle is a place designed to break your expectations of what Pikmin is like and what it is capable of doing. It strips you of all of your resources in such a simple and elegant way. Simply by locking you into blue Pikmin, you're at a special disadvantage that you've never seen yourself in before in this game. There is no strategy that you can use per se, but rather to just mechanically do your best. First, in terms of being agile enough to whistle your Pikmin from the fire, and then in order to protect whatever Bulmin you get so that you don't have to risk taking on more severe hazards with blues. It really does pull a genre shift from a real-time strategy game to a survival horror one, where how quickly you're able to escape and protect your resources is rewarded. I love the Submerged Castle, and even though the sheer experience of it is already enough for it to be a highlight of every time I revisit Pikmin 2, the reward that you get for clearing it is just the cherry on top. I always play this cave as early as possible in my runs of Pikmin 2, and while it would be a little easier, and even though it would be a little easier to do it later on, having cleared more caves and gotten more upgrades, the reward that you get for beating the Water Wraith is just my favorite. Watering crops in farming games is an important thing that is a bit repetitive, time-consuming, and not super thrilling. Plucking Pikmin is this series' equivalent of that. So, enter the Pluckaphone! For the rest of the game, instead of spending all that time with plucking, you can just do this. Is it the most game-changing, useful upgrade you could get in this game? No. But man, it feels good. And so, with my favorite reward out of my favorite level, that is it for the Submerged Castle. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to hit that like and that subscribe and that comment and all that YouTube-y jazz. I took a lot longer making this video than I wanted to, but hey, hopefully the next video I'll try to lock in and get it as fast out as possible, so definitely be on the lookout for that. And with that, I am Linux, and I will see you all in the next one.